Hi YouTube. It's been a while since I've made a post, and I'm certainly not very good at this, but I thought I had a perfect excuse now that we're stuck at home with COVID-19. Been trying the Instagram thing. For those of you that are here, either from the coveringmoreland.com or Covering Moreland Instagram or Facebook page, thank you. I hope that as we journey together, I can get better at this social media thing, and maybe these video blogs, and we can go together. I can learn a little bit about doing social media, and hopefully you can learn a little bit about cars and off-roading and whatever else from me and my wife. Anyway, I had posted a picture of the Blazer, and some of you that have been on our Instagram page have probably seen it before. Me and my wife started traveling this initially before we bought the Land Cruiser. Now the Blazer is old. It's over 30 years old now, and some of the parts are becoming harder to find, so she mostly sits in the garage now, but we still have it, and I wanted to do an overview with it, share some of the modifications that I thought were really beneficial, and some of the things that I'm really proud of and I want to show off. So let's get into it. So here she is in the garage. Thought I'd give you a little background story on it. She was purchased brand new by my uncle in either late 1988 or early 1989, and she's been in the family ever since. Unfortunately, my uncle passed away, I believe in 2003, and sometime before that he'd given it to my grandfather, who passed away in, let's see, was it 2015? And he left it to me before that. It was in somewhat rough shape when I got it, but I think just due to its age, it was still taken care of pretty well. Now, it is a Southern Utah vehicle. It spent most of its life in either Southern Utah, Idaho, or Nevada, and has very little rust because of it, and absolutely no accident damage. In fact, any damage that it did have was probably caused by me in high school. Anyway, here she is. It was repainted by a good friend of mine once, let's see, back in 2012-ish. And the paint's starting to show some wear now just from the highway miles and things. You can see the paint is chipped on the hood, and the paint's starting to come off a little bit on that push bar, but we'll address all that in good time. Let's get away right in the front there and talk, well, let's just talk about a little bit of history of the Blazer. So the Blazer, or at least the Blazer S10, was launched by GM in the 80s as kind of their mini truck, smaller SUV. Now, think about what was going on in the world at the time. We were just kind of getting through the Arab oil embargo, and Americans wanted smaller vehicles, but they didn't want to, excuse the music. Waiting on neighbors. All right, sorry about that, folks. Someone visiting my neighbor decided to pull in the driveway and blare his music for 15 minutes or so, but we're back to it. So where'd we leave off? So embargo, 80s, cars in the US were getting smaller. If you remember the big cars of the 70s compared to the cars of the 80s, cars in the 80s are much, much smaller. So everyone loved the beloved K5 Blazer. But there was a need for something smaller. Initially started as the pickup truck, and then after the pickup truck sold really well, then we saw the Blazer. I want to say, no, I could be totally wrong, but I want to say somewhere around 85, and it was first introduced with a 2.8 liter V6, which was absolutely terrible, and I can't remember who made it. Maybe a Zuzu, but it wasn't even, to the best of my knowledge, a GM engine. I know it doesn't share the standard GM bolt pattern, bell housing bolt pattern, but utterly terrible. In 1988, the 4.3 launched, and that's really where I think the Blazer took off. This one's an 89, but it has the first generation GM fuel injection, which is the throttle body injection. Not to be confused with the Vortec engines that later got spider injection that everyone complains about and knocks their head against the wall for. But throttle body injection has two little injectors that sit on top of the manifold and squirt fuel in, and it works pretty well. Not fuel efficient by any means, nothing really glamorous, but it is reliable. Man, this thing sat a couple of times for several years, and with gasoline in the tank, 2-3 years old, ran idled fine on junk gas, and I think that says a lot about GM's early throttle body injection systems. Anyway, let's get into the truck now. Let's start with the KCs. They're just some cheap, well, I say cheap, I guess nothing KC is really cheap, but some older KC spotlights. Now, I would recommend, if you are going to run lights on your vehicle, floods are good, but I feel that spots are better. When you're out on the trail, it really extends that light quite a distance. These particular ones, though they are small, will throw light easily a quarter mile. So that helps out quite a bit on the trail. If you want to see them in action, take a look at our video when we drove into Canyonlands National Park. It sits on a rough country 2.5-inch lift. Now, don't burn me on the rough country. You're really limited when it comes to lifts for these old Blazers. Rough country happens to be one that you can get. Now, the reason I did go with rough country is it has tubular upper control arms, or A-arms, that help align the vehicle better. Also has an upgraded ball joint to take the abuse, and that's one reason I went with them. It's torsion keys in the front to help give you a little bit of lift, and in the back has a drop shackle, because it is a axle over spring in the back, leaf spring, so you can't anti-block, but a shackle I feel like is 10 times better anyway. So it does have a shackle in the back, keys in the front, it does have a diff drop, and whatever I said, upper A-arms in the front. Does pretty good. It's sitting on 31s. They're 31 by 10.5 by 15s on factory wheels, and it does pretty good. So let's jump in to the rest of the truck. Well, let's start with what you can see. You see the ham radio antenna there. We'll get into that when we get on the inside, but those of you guys who are wheeling a lot and still using CBs, man, CBs are a thing of the past. You can't touch, you can't get the sound quality or the range out of a CB anywhere close to what you can out of a ham radio. CB is limited by the FCC at 4 watts. Amateur radios, depending on what system you run, you can legally run up to 1,000 watts depending on the circumstances. So put the math together. With 50 watts from this radio, I've made several 75-mile plus contacts. So it's a much better, much robust system. Roof rack, cheapo. Just attaches to the factory bars up there, but it's done great. We've put all sorts of junk up there. Gas cans, I easily put 15 gallons of fuel up there with firewood and other things, and it's done great. Let's take a look under the hood. All right, so a lot of things are stock in here. I have modified it at different stages, especially in high school, but all of it's kind of gone back to stock just because of its functionality, and I think that everything I did to the car to modify it was kind of stupid and foolish, especially the vehicle it's not a hot rod. So tried to source all the factory parts again, put it back together. The AC in this car does work. Now in the 80s, vehicles in this country were still running R12, which is I'm gonna butcher this, hydrofluorocarbon. Anyway, bad for the ozone layer, depletes it really fast. Bad for the environment. So everything in, I believe, 1994 was federally mandated to move over to R134A. Now, since this is an R12 system, I had to change a bunch of stuff out. The air compressor's new, all the hoses, all the lines, the evaporator, or sorry, not the evaporator, the condenser was leaking, so it got replaced as well. So all new system. The only original part of the AC system on this truck is the evaporator itself. I didn't feel like pulling the dash out to get it out, and it wasn't leaking. I didn't have any problems with it, so I just left it. Some other modifications under here is you'll see gauges. Here's a water temp gauge on top of the radiator, and over here tied into the remote oil filter relocation bracket is a oil pressure gauge. The reason I did that is this old truck has a digital gauge cluster, and these old GM sensors sometimes don't tend to be the most reliable. So if I do see an issue on the screen where either it says it has high water temps or low oil pressure, I can come in here and double check it. Also use it with diagnosing under the hood, especially when you're out on the trail. If you have a faulty sensor, this gives you a little peace of mind. If I lost oil pressure, or it said I lost oil pressure in the cab, I could come out here and easily see that if I did or did not have oil pressure, and it just gives me a little bit of peace of mind. And by the way, that oil filter relocation is factory. The differential sits right under where the oil filter would go in this engine, so they had to bring it up here. And under the hood, that's pretty much it. A bunch of the stuff's been replaced just due to its age, but mostly with factory bits. Let's move on to the inside of the truck. Okay, so we're here now inside the truck. There's the digital gauge cluster. I want to go over some of the stuff that I've done in here. Also some things that came with the truck. What I like, what I don't like. And first, let's start with what I'm really most proud of. Here's my ham radio system. This is a Yaesu 8800R. This particular model has been discontinued because it is only a dual band UHF VHF, and now they just sell the quad band. Still awesome radio for most of the stuff I do anyway. I don't really have any reason to work 6 meter or, oh, there's some people tuning there. I don't really have a reason to run 6 meter or 10 meter, but you know, 2 meter and 70 centimeter are usually what I'm using most. So I love it. Great radio. Like I said, I've made 75 mile plus contacts. I have it mounted to a ram mount base plate, which attaches to a ram mount ball on the A-pillar. And then my mic here has a steel plate on the back, and then its anchor is actually magnetic. So totally, I was gonna say hands-free, not really hands-free, but I don't have to look at it when hanging the mic up. I just slam it somewhere in the general location and it attaches to the magnet. Here's another one. Looks like we don't have great reception inside the garage with the garage closed, but I did put a digital TV receiver inside this truck with a DVD player. The antenna is up there on the windshield. Now they do make digital TV receivers for RVs and cars and different things. Just search them, you'll certainly find them, but you just need a head unit or a screen that can accept RCAs, and then you can get digital TV wherever you go. I thought that we would utilize this a whole lot while we were out traveling the road, you know, visiting family. I really wanted it so we could watch the news if we were ever traveling in an unfamiliar place and something happened. We were able to get the news. Has your standard remote wherever you're at, campsite, new town. You just hit the scan button, and it will find all the digital TV in that area and program it to the head unit, and you can just scan through your channels. Now it is a DVD player as well and a bunch of other stuff. Don't really need to go on that. I think you guys know how that works. Fire extinguisher. Now this car had a cell phone at one point attached in this location, analog cell phone, but I don't even think there's any analog towers still around. That's very 80s. I replaced it for a cheap fire extinguisher. This runs, you know, $12, $14 at your nearest auto parts store, and it's a good piece of insurance. You know, for when you're out on the trailer, when you're out and about, you know, if you have a small vehicle fire, this could be the difference between burning your car down or making it home. And it's just cheap insurance, guys. One thing that I don't like about a lot of quote-unquote overlanders is they like to put their fire extinguisher in the back with all their supplies. Now, if your personal car catches on fire, typically it's going to be in the engine bay. If you have to run out, open the hatch, get the fire extinguisher, then address the situation, you may be sifting through gear, you may be fumbling with the back hatch, you may be having or it may take quite a long time to get to that, and I don't like that. So I like it accessible. I like it in the front, in the driving area, where you can quickly grab it and address the situation. So anyone who's thinking about putting a fire extinguisher in the cab, I would recommend put it in the general driver's area so it can be quickly accessible. I do have a CB radio in this vehicle. I installed this a long time ago. There's an antenna that goes on the tire carrier on the back hatch that I put on when we're on long road trips, and it only goes on long road trips. Other than that, the antenna doesn't even go on. I don't use it, and the only reason I have this still is you know, talking to the truck drivers on long hauls, or if we're out four-wheeling and we come across a group of people who only have CB, we can communicate with them. Other than that, I don't use it. I mean, CB really sucks. It's a thing of the past, and I wish everybody could just get on ham radio. Though, I know not everyone's dedicated enough to study, take, and pass the test, which is unfortunate, but is what it is. Over here, I do have a mag light attached to the A-pillar. And again, just trying to utilize some of that space that really goes wasted. And I thought it was a good place for a light, so I put one there. And that's really pretty much it. If you want to take a look at the gauge cluster, there you go. Primo from the 80s. Check that out. So this vehicle does come with a factory spare tire carrier, which has been awesome. No need to add a bumper really to this car, and I didn't really want to modify it too much. I wanted to keep some of its stock form just because of how good it looks to me and what it means to the family. Wanted to keep it tastefully modified. Didn't want to get too crazy with it. Didn't want to do you know, big old axles, tires that stick out past the body and whatnot. So I think it's tastefully modified, in my opinion. It's a little taller, a little bit bigger tire, but not a whole lot different. But that spare tire carrier, though, I will say, is awesome. One of for anyone who wants to get into off-roading, camping, or overlanding, I strongly, and that does have a tire on the back, I do strongly suggest you get a Trasheroo. I've got mine hanging up here. It's just a trash bag. Sorry, I didn't prepare this earlier. It's a trash bag that can hang on your spare tire, and you just put your standard black trash bags in it. You can store them in the pouch here, and then put a bag in there and store all your trash when you're out camping in there, and it keeps the stink out of your truck. And then whenever you pass a dumpster, just pull it out, put it in the dumpster. It works great. You can see the CB attached there, and then my coveted Florida antique tag. For those of you who live in Florida know what that means. I think you'll agree. Florida antique tags are awesome. There's no mileage limitations or any limitations at all for the vehicle, but it saves you on initial registration like up to $200 tags, tax and title. So pretty awesome. Your vehicle does have to be 30 years old to get that. My call sign on the window here, and then one of my favorite drives in the whole wide world. If you've been there, you will know it's definitely a special place. This vehicle right now is sitting on aftermarket 1,700 pound leaf springs. Now, my trucks, I typically build them to have a little bit more lift in the back, typically about a ½ inch to an inch higher in the back, so that when you do load all your gear up in the back, it'll sit a little bit more level. I hate the look of trucks that squat in the back, and even when I have a ton of gear on here, I don't want the back to be lower than the front. I think it looks foolish and dumb. One thing that I forgot to mention when we were on the inside that I absolutely hate about this truck is the sunroof. Now, I don't believe this is a factory sunroof. It was either aftermarket or dealer installed in the 80s. But there's no sunshade, no way to close it. It just sits there and beams light on you and burns you when you're out on the trail. And I hate it. And if I could take it off, I would. But now there's really no need to with the car just sitting in the garage. In the back, has a 10-bolt GM rear differential. Now this one does have the Eaton G80 GovLock rear differential, which has blown up like most people's has, but I rebuilt it. So it works okay. Now, it's a little different in its operation compared to every other mechanical locking differential. It doesn't work like a lunchbox. Doesn't really work like a limited slip or a Torsen limited slip differential. What it does is when there's a difference in wheel speed side to side of greater than, I can't remember, I think 100 RPM, it will use that centripetal force to fling these flyweights out that push on a lever that engage a set of clutches that are in the ends of the differential that act as brakes, kind of like in an automatic transmission, and lock the axle side to side. It works pretty good. The only thing I don't like about at least this one in particular is that when you're in a situation where one tire is completely free and spinning and the other one is stopped, the carrier speed is too great to engage the differential locker, so I find myself having to drag the brakes or give it a little less throttle to try and get it to engage. If the carrier speed is too fast, it won't engage to keep it from blowing it up. I'm trying to think. That's really pretty much it in the back. You do have a little bit of space inside. I don't think I really need to show you. Oh, there's my finger. Amateur here. Only sits 2 people in the back, 2 people in the front. So a real small vehicle, not gonna fit your whole family in it. And that pretty much wraps it up. Let's take a look, little sneak shot of the TC. If you wanna see a build breakdown about this vehicle, go ahead and let me know in the comments or send me a message. Of course, we will be doing a breakdown on the Land Cruiser. So that's gonna wrap things up here. Thanks for tuning in, and sorry for my crappy camera work. You even got a finger in there. I know, real amateur, but that's what I am. We're not trying to do this to get money. We just want to share some of our experiences and have fun while doing it. I'm learning a lot about social media and about other things, and I'm having a lot of fun. So hopefully you see that. You can forgive me for not being a professional or being that great, but I hope you've enjoyed this. For those of you who have not jumped on the Covering Moorland or coveringmoorland.com, go check it out. My wife's done a great job documenting all of our trips, or at least most of our trips. And go check out the Instagram page. I've done a lot to try and post pictures of our trips and the things that I've liked along the way. And if you want to see the Land Cruiser or the Blazer in action, go check it out. We've got some good glamour shots there. Anyway, thanks guys. Hopefully we'll do this more. Hopefully it'll get better. Thanks for bearing with me. Have a great day and stay safe from the coronavirus.